The 1800s marked a transformative era for Native American tribes inhabiting the Great Plains, a vast region stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. These tribes, including the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Comanche, lived lives deeply connected to the land, thriving amidst its rugged beauty and harsh realities. Their cultures were rich and diverse, with their social systems, spiritual beliefs, and everyday activities closely tied to the plains. Central to their way of life was the American bison, a symbol of their survival and spirituality. However, the 19th century brought significant challenges, including forced relocations, battles for land, and the impact of European settlers. Despite these difficulties, the Plains tribe's strength and spirit remain clear, creating a lasting legacy that will forever be remembered. Join us on today's episode of Native Journal as we delve into the life, culture, and legacy of these remarkable communities during this pivotal century. The land and its people. The Great Plains spreads from the Mississippi River across the flat land of the center of the present-day USA to the east of the Rocky Mountains. It's made up of a landscape of valleys, towering buttes, rolling grasses, prairies, bisons and other wildlife animals, rivers, and a rich variety of fauna and flora. These tribes created villages in the spring, hunted in the summer, and then harvested their crops in the fall, and then go hunting again in the winter. The Plains was a home to several Native American tribes such as Pawnee, Kiowa, Arapaho, Crow, Blackfoot, Comanche, Cheyenne, and Sioux. Each of these tribes have their own unique cultures and traditions. However, they all had one thing in common: the deep connection that they shared with the land. It was this connection that shaped their ways of life, their social structures, as well as their beliefs. The bison was the bedrock of all these tribes as every part of the animal was used. This huge animal provided them with shelter, food, clothing, and tools. This was why rituals and ceremonies were accompanied to the hunt to honor the animal's spirit. Since the bison was the basis of their survival, so it's no surprise that nearly all these Native American tribes were nomadic as they moved with the seasons just to follow the bison herds. Interestingly, these tribes defined their territories by natural landmarks and seasonal resources, instead of creating rigid borders. Despite the common practices and beliefs shared by these numerous tribes, they still maintained their specific identities and often fought over resources and territories. These conflicts and rivalries resulted to the tribes forming a coalition for mutual benefits or engaging in wars in order to protect their respective interests. Daily life and culture. The life of the natives of the plain were built on a strong sense of community and family. Each member of a family had a specific role to play, and their roles were essential to their tribe's survival. The men were mostly hunters and warriors with a sole responsibility of providing food for their families and protecting their tribes. The women took care of their homes, crafted clothing, prepared food, and catered for their children. The nomadic natives, who often followed herds of bisons, lived in teepees. Teepees are typically created from buffalo skins and laid on wooden pools. They did not really have to worry about shelters wherever they went, because the structure of these teepees were easy for them to move around and set up anywhere on the plains. The common diet and culture of the natives was the bison. Once a successful hunt had been carried out by the tribesmen, this meant that there would be meat for food, hides for shelter and clothing, tools and weapons made from the bison's bones. The bison meat is dried and preserved for winters or long journeys. This preserved and dried bison meat is known as pemmican, an important source of food for the natives during winter. Apart from hunting, the Plains people practiced limited agriculture by growing sister crops such as corn, squash, and beans. They were also gatherers of wild plants and berries. The elders played the role of storytelling of their ancestors, heroes, and creation myths to pass down knowledge to their younger generations. During ceremonies and social gatherings, the natives sing and dance to songs that are unique to their tribes. Significantly, it helped them to maintain their sense of identity and where they came from. Spirituality and beliefs. The American natives believed that all things had spirits, so they revered every living creature and the sky. They worshipped Wakantanka, the great spirit whom they believed had power over everything that existed. These natives also revered the earth as the mother of all spirits. The Plains tribes held ceremonies to honor the earth, sky, water, and fire, to recognize their vital roles in sustaining life. Their deep reverence for nature is reflected in their respective cultures. That was why they lived in harmony with the Great Plains. The natives held on to the belief that some objects were made up of talismanic power. Each tribe had its own set of symbols that held specific meanings and were often used in art, clothing, and ceremonies. One of such objects is the shield. The shield was referred to as the most prized totem of any warrior that was specifically decorated with numerous paintings and feathers. The paintings on the shield were the spirits of animals that they believed to protect the owner. Some natives were known as shamans or wakans. They were the spiritual leaders of the tribes who had the power to heal people and also decided the right time for the men to hunt. They helped to maintain the health and spiritual well-being of their people. To become a shaman or a medicine man for these plain natives, all your prayers must be answered by the Great Spirit, or you must have the ability to see a sign from him. The plain natives used the vision quest when they needed spiritual help in any area of their lives. The person involved would head to a lonely spot to fast and ask for aid. If he's successful, a spirit being would appear to him in a dream or supernatural vision to give him instructions that would lead to his successful endeavor. The sacred ceremonies and rituals were a crucial part of the natives' life. One of the most important was the sun dance, although each tribe had their own distinct ways of performing the dance. However, the common features among the tribes included fasting, experiencing visions, dancing, singing, praying, drumming, and more. Other sacred ceremonies included the ghost dance, which was integrated into the belief systems of the plain natives by Wovoka, who was known as the prophet of peace among the Inuits. Wovoka prophesied that the white American expansion would come to a peaceful end, and he fostered this prophecy by preaching messages of an honest life, clean living, and cross-cultural cooperation. At first, this ritual was only common among the Inuit according to Wovoka, but soon it spread its tentacles to other tribes who selectively integrated some of the aspects of the ritual to their own belief systems. This created a kind of change between the tribe that originated it and the ritual itself. Conflicts and encounters with the Europeans. The 1800s was an era of profound change for the Native Americans of the Great Plains. This period brought about the arrival of the Europeans who had also come to settle on the plains. Their settlement on the plains led to conflicts with the native tribes. The Europeans fought the natives over the plains' resources and eventually changed the ways of life of the people of the Great Plains forever. The early interactions between the Native Americans of the plains and the Europeans brought about trade and curiosity between them. The Europeans introduced new items such as firearms, metal tools, and more that could impact their daily lives to the tribes. The natives also reciprocated by gifting them items that symbolized their rich cultures. According to historians Peter Carroll and David Noble, they described the Native Americans' first encounter with the Europeans as follows. On an otherwise ordinary autumn day shortly after sunrise, the Arawak inhabitants of the Caribbean islands noticed strange ships sailing on the horizon, much larger than their dugout canoes. As these ships moved closer and closer, they saw strange-looking people with light skins aboard, making odd gestures. The Arawak youth stood at the banks hesitantly, and then some of the braver men began swimming toward the mysterious boats. These strangers offered the Arawak red-colored caps, glass beads, and other curious trifles. In exchange, the Arawak brought parrots, cotton skeins, darts, and other items. Then the strangers drew out swords, which the Arawak, in ignorance, grasped by the blades, cutting themselves. It was a symbolic act, this inadvertent drawing of blood. For the Arawak and the strangers looked at the world from opposite angles, and both were fascinated by what the other was not. The Arawak saw these newcomers with their big ships on their shores as non-humans, because they spoke different languages, dressed differently from them, and apparently had a white color. After Christopher Columbus' first voyage to America, he penned down that, "They believe very firmly that I, with these ships and people, came from the sky." Other Native American tribes that encountered their first contact with the Europeans also reacted in similar ways. Another encounter of the first contact with the tribes was the Lewis and Clark expedition. It was the first occasion for United States citizens to travel so far by river, and they ended up in the plains. When they returned to their homeland, they provided detailed maps, details about natural resources, and the indigenous populations that they had met. Their reports made it easier for others to follow and lay their claims to the abundance of resources of the plains. 4 years after their expedition returned, traders started moving deep into the Louisiana Territory to exchange goods with plains tribes. However, their exchange brought about diseases that drastically reduced the Native Americans' population, westward expansion, and its impact. The new settlers saw the prosperity of the untamed beauty of the Great Plains and decided to expand further to the west. This made more Easterners moved further to the west. The government then created policies of removal and relocation of the native tribes to free up land for the new settlers. One of such policies was the Dawes Act, or General Allotment of 1887, which allowed the government to divide up reservations into tracts of land for individuals and families. Many reservations for the Native Americans were located far away from the tribe's historical, cultural, and sacred areas, and from traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering areas. They were forced to abandon their culture and rituals. The land that was left over after these reservations were created were regarded as surplus and were open to white Americans to settle. This led to a huge conflicting interest between the newcomers and the native tribes. The US government's policy of manifest destiny justified the Europeans' expansion, but it was at the expense of Native American lands and lives. This resulted in increased violence between the natives and the Europeans. One of such intense wars that took place in the 1800s was the Indian Wars. The Indian Wars started out as a series of battles because the native tribes fought to defend their lands from the European settlers and the military. The most significant Indian Wars took place in 1876. It was known as the Battle of the Little Bighorn. The Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes combined their forces together to fight with the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the United States. It resulted in the defeat of the United States forces. In order to resolve these conflicts, the United States government negotiated several treaties with Native American tribes. These treaties included land, resources, and protection for the various tribes, but they were often broken or renegotiated during upheavals. One of such was the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868. The treaty promised the Lakotas ownership of the Black Hills. The treaty was later violated when gold was discovered in Black Hills. This led to more conflict. In the late 1800s, the government began sending the Native American tribes' children to off-reservation boarding schools. These children were separated from their families and were not allowed to practice their cultural traditions or speak their languages. Some of the first boarding schools were founded by Richard Pratt. He described their purpose in a speech where he said, "A great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one. In a sense, I agree with the sentiment, but only in this, that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him and save the man." These schools were built to erase land and cultural ties in order to make these natives more American. The government did this so that they could continue to take indigenous land more easily and accommodate Americans migrating to the West. Despite the overwhelming pressures of the US government, there were numerous Native American tribes that resisted and found ways to preserve their cultural practices in secret or adapted them to the new circumstances. Leaders like Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce and Geronimo of the Apache stood as symbols of resistance. The legacy of this period is a proof of their enduring spirit and will to preserve their cultural heritage and identities. Legacy and modern-day perspectives. Despite the immense challenges of the tribes brought by the 1800s, the Native American tribes of the Great Plains have shown remarkable resilience. Their legacy is a remarkable inspiration that still provides a basis for cultural revival and future impacts. They have endured significant hardships from forced relocations to cultural suppression. Yet they were able to ensure the survival of their languages, customs, and spiritual practices, and still passed it down through generations. Over the years, the Native American people have rekindled their cultural heritage by creating a powerful movement towards it. Some of their efforts include language preservation programs, the reintroduction of traditional ceremonies, and the teaching of ancestral skills and knowledge to younger generations. To showcase their rich traditions, they celebrate powwows and cultural festivals. Today, the Native American tribe still continues to face some challenges such as economic development, land rights, healthcare disparities, as well as preserving their cultural heritage. However, these tribes are in full action to resolve these issues by legal action, community programs, and advocacy. Numerous tribes have been able to achieve remarkable successes, such as the creation of tribal businesses and casinos that brings in revenue for their communities. That's not all. Their initiatives also includes educational programs and scholarships. These programs' initiatives will help to empower the next generation of Native American leaders in preserving their rich culture and traditions. There are prominent Native American figures such as political leaders, artists, and activists that have continued to bring awareness and advocate for their communities. Some of these figures are Deb Haaland, Lauren Goodday, Kay Walkingstick, Quanah Chasing Horse, and Jason Momoa. Deb Haaland was the first Native American U.S. Cabinet Secretary that has helped to raise awareness about the natives. Lauren Goodday is an award-winning artist that started her career at the age of 6. She is renowned for blending old traditions with modern culture. Her art has been featured at some of the nation's most prestigious shows, including the Autry American Indian Arts Marketplace, K Walking Stick, popularly known as Cherokee. She is renowned for incorporating various elements into her paintings that are viewed as being uniquely Native American, such as well-known chiefs, warriors, and influential figures. Quanah Chasing Horse is a Native American model and activist from the ancestry of Lakota and Navajo. She is renowned for using her platform to support Native tribes' sovereignty and sustainability. She made headlines at the 2022 Met Gala when she combined contemporary looks with intricate Native jewelry and headpieces and looked spectacular. Jason Momoa is a popular actor that is proud of his Native heritage and talks about it at every opportunity he gets. Jason is a Native Hawaiian on his father's side. He is also deeply involved in safeguarding his native land. He was recently involved in helping to protest the development of Mauna Kea, the Hawaii's tallest mountain. Jason also identifies as Pawnee from his grandmother's side. Even after facing hardships for centuries, the Plains tribes have kept a strong sense of community and identity, showing their resilience. This is why they take the preservation of their cultural traditions seriously and fosters communal bonds. All these and more provide a sense of belonging and continuity, thereby helping them to navigate the complexities of their modern existence. Looking to the future, the Native American tribes of the Great Plains are focused on creating and developing sustainable and prosperous communities that's blended with their traditional knowledge and modern innovations, so that as they are charting a path forward, it will honor their heritage while embracing new opportunities that civilization brings. And with that, we wrap up today's episode. Thank you for joining us once again. We hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you will be the first to see our new updates. See you in our next video.